What if that campfire story that kept you up all night wasn't just a story? We're taught to think of urban legends as fake, scary tales designed for a quick thrill, a shiver down the spine before we retreat to our rational world. But we all love a good scary story, right? So what happens when that story walks out of the shadows and into reality? We're about to explore the chilling cases where terrifying paranormal myths were shockingly proven to be based on real-life events. The boogeyman your parents warned you about, the monster under the bed, the maniac from the late-night news. Sometimes they aren't just stories. Today, we're counting down 7 paranormal urban legends that turned out to be terrifyingly true. You'll definitely want to stick around for our number 1 spot, where a local boogeyman became the face of a real-life nightmare. The legend is as simple as it is horrifying. A couple checks into a hotel, maybe in Vegas or Atlantic City, and they're immediately hit with a terrible smell. They call the front desk, complain, but get told it's probably just the plumbing or old carpets. Trying to ignore it, they go to sleep, but the stench only gets worse. The next morning, they can't take it anymore and decide to investigate. They check the vents, the bathroom, behind the curtains. Finally, one of them lifts the mattress and finds its source, a dead body hidden inside the box spring or stuffed under the bed frame. It sounds like a classic campfire tale, a warning about the anonymity of travel and the horrors that could be lurking inches away. But for several unlucky hotel guests, it was a horrifying reality. This isn't just a legend, it's a recurring crime that has happened so many times, it has solidified its place in modern folklore. In July of 2003, guests at the Capri Motel in Kansas City, Missouri, complained for 3 days about a foul odor in their room. All the while, they slept in the bed as the smell grew worse. Finally, the source was discovered, the decomposing body of a man hidden inside the bed's box spring. The truth was even more disturbing than the legend. They had unknowingly slept directly above a corpse for 3 nights straight, and this wasn't an isolated incident. In March 2010, the family of a missing Memphis woman named Sunny Millbrook finally got a terrible answer to where she had gone. Her body was discovered inside the metal bed frame in room 222 of a budget lodge, the very room she had been staying in when she vanished. The most chilling detail, in the time she went missing, the room had been rented out to at least 5 different guests, all of whom slept on that bed, completely unaware of the horror concealed beneath them. Hotel staff had even stuffed fabric softener sheets into the ceiling tiles to try to mask the persistent, terrible smell. Police eventually arrested her boyfriend, Lakeith Moody, in connection with her death. And it happens again and again. In June 1999, 2 German tourists at the Burgundy Motor Inn in Atlantic City complained about a powerful stench. Staff found the body of 64-year-old Saul Hernandez inside the bed in room 112. In 1988, at a hotel in Mineola, New York, the body of Mary Jean D'Olivia was found stuffed in a box spring after guests complained. Her killer, Cornelius Walls, was captured days later, and when he was, police found he was holding another 26-year-old woman captive in his car, likely saving her from the same fate. The body under the bed isn't a myth. It's a grim reminder that when you check into a room, you never know who or what was there before you. In 1991, horror legend Wes Craven released a film with a blunt and terrifying title, The People Under the Stairs. The story follows a young boy from a Los Angeles ghetto named Fool, who breaks into the home of his family's cruel landlords, the Robesons. He's looking for money, but what he finds is a house of horrors. The Robesons are a depraved, murderous couple who have imprisoned dozens of pale, cannibalistic children in their basement and within the walls of their mansion. It's a surreal, disturbing film that feels like a twisted fairy tale. But what if I told you this bizarre story has a real-life counterpart? Wes Craven himself said the inspiration for his film came directly from a real news story he read. Sources point to a 1978 incident in Los Angeles that started, much like the movie, with a burglary. When police tried to investigate the break-in, they inadvertently stumbled upon a far more sinister crime. The homeowners, who appeared perfectly normal to the outside world, had locked their 2 children away, never allowing them to leave the house. Craven was captivated by the chilling idea that such hideous atrocities could be hidden behind the facade of a normal suburban home. He took that seed of a true story and expanded it into the grotesque world of the Robesons. But the core horror, children imprisoned by their own parents, was pulled straight from reality. Unfortunately, this scenario isn't unique. Reality has proven to be just as, if not more, disturbing than Craven's fiction. In 2018, the world was shocked by the case of the Turpin family in Paris, California. David and Louise Turpin had kept their 13 children, aged 2 to 29, captive in their home for years. One of the daughters, then 17, escaped and called 911. When police entered the house, they found some of the children shackled to their beds in dark, foul-smelling rooms. They were severely malnourished and had not been allowed to bathe for months. From the outside, the Turpins seemed like just another large, slightly odd family. But inside, they were living a nightmare that mirrored the horrors of Wes Craven's film, proving that the scariest monsters are often the ones living right next door. It's one of the most iconic urban legends ever, whispered around campfires and in the back seats of cars for generations. A young couple is parked on a dark, secluded lover's lane. The radio is on when the music is suddenly interrupted by a news bulletin. A dangerous patient with a hook for a hand has escaped from a nearby asylum. The girl, terrified, begs her boyfriend to take her home. He tries to act brave, but reluctantly starts the car. As they pull away, they hear a strange scraping sound against the door. When they finally get to her house, he gets out to open her door and sees it. Hanging from the handle is a bloody hook. The Hookman is pure folklore, a cautionary tale about the dangers of isolated places. But what if this legend didn't come from nowhere? To find its roots, we have to go back to 1946, to the small town of Texarkana, which straddles the Texas-Arkansas border. Between February and May of that year, a hooded attacker the press would dub the Phantom Killer terrorized the community. His reign of terror began on February 22nd when he attacked a young couple, Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry, in their parked car on a secluded road. The attacker, wearing a white sack over his head with eye holes cut out, blinded them with a flashlight. He brutally beat Jimmy, but Mary managed to escape and both survived. But the Phantom was just getting started. On March 24th, Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore were found murdered in their car. 3 weeks later, on April 14th, Paul Martin and Betty Jo Booker were also found shot to death near their parked car, and another popular spot for young couples. Panic swept through Texarkana. Lovers' lanes were deserted. People stayed home, often with loaded shotguns. The Texas Rangers were called in, but the Phantom remained elusive. His final known attack came on May 3rd, when he broke into a rural farmhouse, killing Virgil Starks and shooting his wife Katie twice in the face. Miraculously, she survived. And then the killing stopped. The Phantom Killer was never caught, and the case remains one of America's most famous unsolved serial murder mysteries. While there's no evidence the killer used a hook, the parallels to the urban legend are undeniable. A mysterious predator who targeted young couples in parked cars. Folklorists believe the very real terror of the Texarkana Moonlight murders seeped into the national consciousness, providing the bloody factual basis for the fictional tale of the Hookman. The year is 1981. In a few arcades in Portland, Oregon, a new game appears. It's a plain black cabinet with just one word on it, Polybius. The game is a dizzying psychedelic shooter, fast-paced with abstract shapes and bright flashing colors. It's intensely addictive. Lines form around the cabinet, but then the side effects start. Players report amnesia, nightmares, and anxiety. Some supposedly go insane. To add to the mystery, arcade owners report seeing strange men in black visiting the machines, not to collect quarters, but to download data from inside the cabinet. Then, just as suddenly as they appeared, every Polybius cabinet vanishes. The story of Polybius sounds like a modern myth, a ghost story for the digital ages. And for the most part, it is. There's no physical evidence a game called Polybius ever existed. But this legend is woven from a patchwork of very real, very strange events from the early 1980s. First, the health effects. In 1981, 2 different children in the Portland area actually did fall ill at arcades. One suffered a migraine after playing Tempest, and another got sick trying to set a record on asteroids. These separate medical incidents quickly merged into a single terrifying story: a killer video game. Second, the Men in Black. Why would the government be interested in arcade games? In that same period, FBI agents were really staking out arcades in Portland. They weren't recruiting spies. They were investigating illegal gambling rings where owners were modifying machines to act like video poker. So people genuinely did see shadowy government agents taking an unusual interest in their video games. Finally, there's the mind control angle, often connected to the CIA's notorious MKUltra program. That part is shockingly real. MKUltra was an illegal human experimentation program run by the CIA from the 1950s till it was halted in 1973. It uses methods like high doses of psychoactive drugs, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and other forms of torture on unwitting American and Canadian citizens to develop mind control techniques. The existence of this program was confirmed through declassified documents in the 1970s. The idea that the government would use a video game for psychological experiments didn't seem so far-fetched to a public that had just learned about the program's real-life horrors. Polybius, the game, may be fictional, but it's a fiction built on a foundation of truth. From phantom killers to government conspiracies, these stories prove that sometimes real life is scarier than any legend. If you're finding these dives into the dark side of folklore as fascinating as we are, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications, because you won't want to miss our #1 legend, which brought a terrifying boogeyman to life. Deep in Fairfax County, there's an old concrete tunnel under a railway line known as the Boogeyman Bridge. For decades, it's been the center of a local legend. The story goes that in the early 1900s, an asylum patient transport bus crashed, and an inmate named Douglas Grifton escaped. As police searched, they found a gruesome trail of half-eaten, mutilated rabbit carcasses hanging from trees leading to the bridge. The legend says that on Halloween night, if you go to the Boogeyman Bridge, you'll meet the same gruesome end. It's a great horror story. But in 1970, the legend crashed into reality in one of the most bizarre, documented, and unsolved cases in Virginia history. On the night of October 18, 1970, an Air Force cadet named Robert Bennett and his fiancée were parked on a local road when a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a man in a white suit, long bunny ears. He yelled at them for being on private property, then hurled a hatchet at their car, smashing the front window. Bennett sped away as the man in the bunny suit skipped off into the night. 10 days later, on October 29th, it happened again. A security guard named Paul Phillips saw a man in a gray, black and white bunny costume on the porch of an unfinished home. The man was chopping at a porch post with a long-handled axe, shouting, "All you people trespass around here. If you don't get out of here, I'm gonna bust you on the head." Police launched an investigation and received over 50 calls from people claiming to have seen the Bunny Man. Despite their efforts, they were never able to identify him. The case was eventually closed, leaving a chilling question: who was the Bunny Man? The real events, documented in official police reports, were so strange, they mutated into the supernatural horror story told today. A legend born from the true story of an angry man in a bunny costume with an axe. There are lonely country roads in western Pennsylvania that were once the setting for a terrifying dare. For decades, teens would drive out at night, park their cars and wait. They were looking for a monster, a local legend known as the Green Man, or more cruelly, Charlie No Face. The story was that he was a ghost or a demon who haunted the roads. They said he had no face, just a mangled mess of flesh, and that his skin glowed a sickly green. To some, he was the victim of an industrial accident. To others, he was struck by lightning. The story grew more monstrous with each retelling. But Charlie No Face wasn't a ghost. He was a man. His name was Raymond Robinson, and his true story isn't one of supernatural horror, but of unimaginable tragedy. Raymond was born in 1910. In 1919, when he was just 8 years old, he climbed a utility pole to look at a bird's nest and made contact with high-voltage trolley wires. The accident should have killed him, but it didn't. He lost his eyes, his nose, and one of his arms. His face was left severely disfigured. Knowing his appearance would cause panic, Raymond became a creature of the night. For decades, to get fresh air, he took long, solitary walks along a quiet stretch of Route 351 after dark, using a walking stick to guide him. And that's when people started to see him. A glimpse in the headlights, a man with no face. Local curiosity turned into legend. The Green Man nickname might have come from his green clothing, or an infection that gave his damaged nose a greenish hue. The reality was far from the horror story. Most people who stopped found a kind, shy man. They bring him beer or cigarettes, and he let them take his picture for a few dollars. But for every kind encounter, there were cruel ones. Raymond passed away in 1985 at the age of 74, but the legend of Charlie No Face lives on. A chilling example of how society can take a real person's pain and warp it into a terrifying piece of folklore, turning the gentle man forced to walk in the dark into the monster that haunted it. Every town has its boogeyman. For kids on Staten Island, New York, his name was Cropsey. He was an escaped mental patient with a hook for a hand who lived in the abandoned tunnels beneath the old Willowbrook State School. They said he'd emerged from the woods to snatch children. He was a campfire stoker, a local boogeyman, until he wasn't. This was just a myth until a real-life monster named Andre Rand brought the nightmare to life. The chilling backdrop is the infamous Willowbrook State School itself. Opened in 1947, it was a state-funded institution for children with intellectual disabilities. By the 1960s, it was horrifically overcrowded with rife and abuse. In 1972, a young reporter named Geraldo Rivera, yes, that Geraldo Rivera, exposed the deplorable conditions in a groundbreaking TV report showing the world images of neglected children living in squalor. Willowbrook became a national symbol of cruelty before it was finally shut down in 1987. Its decaying campus was the perfect setting for a horror story. For years, the legend was just that, a legend. But in the 1970s and 80s, children on Staten Island started to disappear. The man who would become the real-life Cropsey was Andre Rand. Rand had actually worked at Willowbrook as an orderly. After its closure, he became homeless, living in campsites in the dense woods surrounding the abandoned school, the very woods where Cropsey was said to dwell. In 1987, the line between myth and reality blurred forever. A 12-year-old girl with Down syndrome named Jennifer Swagger went missing. Witnesses saw her with Andre Rand. Her body was found 35 days later in a shallow grave on the grounds of the abandoned Willowbrook School, not far from one of Rand's campsites. Rand was arrested and convicted of kidnapping, but the story doesn't end there. Rand became the prime suspect in the disappearances of several other children, including Holly Ann Hughes in 1981. In 2004, while still in prison, Rand was convicted for her kidnapping as well. Her body has never been found. Andre Rand was the boogeyman made real. He worked at the evil institution from the legend. He lived in the cursed woods from the stories, and he snatched children, just like the monster from the campfire tales, transforming a local ghost story into a horrifying reality. From an axe-wielding man in a bunny suit to the real-life monster of Staten Island, these stories prove that the line between myth and reality is thinner than we'd like to think. We tell these stories to scare each other, but the most frightening part is discovering there was a real reason to be scared all along, because reality is, and always will be, more terrifying than fiction. What other urban legends have you heard that might be true? Is there a local boogeyman in your hometown with a story that's a little too real? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed these chilling true stories, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more dives into the unexplained. Thanks for watching.